Hi, my name is Beth Bonness, and my preferred form of creativity, one of them is as a poet. My spark of what had me love poetry was back in high school. Fell in love with Emily Dickinson and E.E. Cummings, and they were such renegades with this very conservative high school that I went to. And then didn't write a lot of poetry. I mean, did during, in high school with relationships and boys, a lot of boys, and then didn't really pick it up again until I had a series of strokes and the universe was trying to get me to slow down and I wasn't paying attention. And then I had a lot of time to do a bunch of reflection on my stress levels and thriving career, wonderful family, but I was really craving spending more time writing, and poetry after the strokes was a perfect way, it was a perfect container to kind of, with my fragmented brain, to work through what I had experienced. And so that's how I ended up getting back into poetry. And I didn't write just about the strokes, but it was kind of the strokes got my attention. So that was my coming back into writing poetry. Personal experience, whether we can put our fingers on it or not, whether it's relationships, TV shows we watch, books we read, movies we go to, our subconscious is just populated with all this information, and we never know kind of how it's going to pop up. And the having an experience where it was a really rich moment, that taking some time to sit down and write about it in poetry, I'm free-form poetry, or in a micro memoir kind of format, is a wonderful way to just capture what had happened. And then you kind of go on moving around your life, and then you go back and look, and it's like, oh, that was a really rich experience. I'm really glad that I wrote that down, whether it gets published or not. And you just keep doing those pieces and then submit them when you think that they're, good enough to submit or will resonate with people. There are so many. That's kind of a trick question, and it's like, what's your favorite movie or, your favorite book? From a poetry perspective, Emily Dickinson and E. Cummings still resonate. And I was Emily Dickinson, there's a TV series, an Apple TV series that just came out, and it's a very modern hip hop. It's like she's got a Depp character, and if you can imagine Snoop Dogg and Johnny Depp having a son, that would be this character. And it's examining what Emily Dickinson, what was going on kind of in her head and in the cultural, zeitgeist of the moment. But it really reignited my love of her just taking the everyday and writing about it. She had 1,800 poems and only like 10 of them were published. And so she was really writing for herself, which is an inspiration, because often I think when you're trying to get your work out, it's like, well, who's gonna buy this, or who's gonna think that this is important? And sometimes you lose what your voice is if you're always trying to answer the question you think the way, the teacher, so to speak, wants you to answer it. So she was a big one. And E.E. Cummings, I went to an all-girl Catholic high school. I was very good at following the rules. And so seeing E.E. Cummings and his syntax, it was such a renegade to just like have me use the small letter I when I referred to me. It was a way for me to kind of be a renegade without getting into real trouble. And then I joke, because when I saw that lowercase I years later in my journals, it's like, you deserve an uppercase I, not a lowercase I. But it was my creative exercising back then. When I reflect on the poetry that affects me, it's that I'm experiencing something from a slightly different perspective, but it still resonates. It's hard not to find something that happened to me in their work. And so my hope is that when people read my work, that it gets them to take a pause and just look at things from a slightly different perspective, and to take a break. Ray Bradbury, who's, you probably don't, you're too young, you probably don't even know who he is, but he was a big sci-fi writer, and his book to writers tells everybody to read poetry every day, because it synthesizes the image and the emotion that you're trying to do without having long form. And so regardless of what kind of writer you are, his recommendation is to read poetry every day. And it just, when you have a good poem, it just kind of sideswipes you a little bit, and not in a bad way, but in looking at the world from fresh eyes. And so I would hope that my poems would allow people to do that. There's this one, his name is Van Jordan, and the book I got of his is Quantum Lyrics. And the reason I was drawn to him is I was taking a class, and a woman, it was about micro memoir, which could be anything from the poetic to just a really short, prose piece. But what caught my eye with him is that he uses screenwriting format in his poetry. And I, like a lot of people, have a screenplay that's in the drawer kind of thing. So he's got one where it's in, I don't know if people are familiar with screenwriting format, but it says stuff like fade to interior, and he said Albert Einstein's head, and then goes into trying to do this very poetic explanation about relativity. And it's just such a creative way to get you into what he's trying to communicate. I mean, he could have done it with just talking about with Einstein, but just doing the screenplay. So that's a delightful one. And this other one is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriella Zevin. And two of my millennial kids, a month apart, were reading it when we saw them. And when I saw it the second time, it's like, okay, what is that book? And it's fiction. It's about two gamer friends and the ups and downs of them being friends, a little bit more than friends, going their separate ways. And it just, there's world building from the story that they're telling, but it's also world building in the gaming world. And so I've got a computer science degree, so it was very delightful to kind of resonate with some of the, kind of the coding aspect of it. But it was just, again, a really creative way to blend things in telling a story. This was actually the first poem I got published, and it's a visual poem, so it's hard, if I'm just reading it. But this was very much inspired by E.E. Cummings in terms of the format. So it's called Nose Piercing. Fingers shake ever so slightly beneath a cupped hand resting in my lap. Smile thoughts forced over a cliff by inside cheering hooligans, ready for initiation of a lifetime undercover member exposed. It's time. Inked Brooklyn expat, disarming chatter, a purposeful distraction welcomed. Point by point prelude. Deep, nervous, inhale. Exhale, quick crunch through cartilage. Tears stream, a delayed jolt of adrenaline. Arm-crossed hooligans watching high-five each other. Nostril twitches, a tiny diamond sparkles. You can check out bethbonness.com, and that's got Transition Thunderstorms, which is the poetry chapbook that I read Nose Piercing from. And I also do podcasts. I've got newsletter, blog, a writing group. And so everything about me is up there. So that's the place to go.